Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from WalrusCarp.com, and today we are starting something that we've been dying to dive into attraction-wise, and that is the Twilight Zone's Tower of Terror. Now, buckle up, kids, and make sure to check those seatbelts, because this is going to be a long and thrilling ride, as it'll probably take us quite a few episodes, because there's quite a few iterations, and we're going to have to start all the way in the beginning to like the 1400s. But we'll get to that in a second. With us to explore this terrifying Twilight Zone is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, how we doing?
I'm doing really great. This is such an interesting attraction because of the storylines for it and the history that's woven into it. And I was thinking about it, Kirk, that it's like the perfect ride for us to do because it incorporates stuff from like the 1950s and 60s and the 30s for like me, but it also is kind of like a little bit more modern for you because you love kind of like the 90s and stuff. So we get this like good blend of eras in here.
Yeah, I think right. So like, this attaches to my childhood in the 1980s, 1990s, and then it also has that vintage aesthetic. Actually, most of the things that I share today are going to be right up your wheelhouse because it's like 1920s through 1950s. Yeah. So I think you're going to be vibing on everything we throw down today.
Yeah, very excited for this. So we always kind of struggle a little bit, or at least maybe I do. Maybe Kirk doesn't, but I always struggle a little bit with like, where do we start this series? It's such a big...
I have never struggled with this. This is a Kate problem. No, I don't. No, it's true. It's true. A big series like this. How do you tackle it?
Yeah, it's like eating an elephant one bite at a time, right? That's what we do. So I tell it to my son all the time when he's overwhelmed with creative projects. So that's how
he's like, but I'm never going to eat an elephant, Mom.
So I thought that maybe it would be a good place to start to make sure we add some context behind, not just, Twilight Zone, which is part of the context we're going to be talking about today, but also, and where the concept comes from for the ride itself, but further back, the history of drop tower rides themselves because...
Yay! I'm very excited about this. This is very fun. The research was awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to start off with Kirk. Then we're going to talk a little bit of Twilight Zone history, and then we're going to jump into the Imagineering, a little bit about Sunset Boulevard and Imagineering, and that's kind of probably all we'll get to today is through the concept for this attraction, and then we'll talk more mechanics and whatnot next week. So, Kirk, I feel like I would love for you to go first if you're ready to chat about the history of some of these like freefall rides and whatnot.
Oh, I am ready. Okay. So, first up, we are going to go all the way back to the time of Leonardo da Vinci. And You're going to go, well, dude, what are you talking about? Why on earth are you bringing up Da Vinci? Well, it's because the advent of the modern day parachute, which is the origin story of how we get to the Tower of Terror. So the very first known modern day style parachute comes from the workings of Leonardo da Vinci. It looked ridiculous, dude. Like you literally jump out with like a scrim attached to a giant wooden frame, and it was horrifying. And if somebody actually saved themselves with this, I would be blown away. But I don't think that ever happened.
Yeah, that it's almost like a hang glider, but you're just hanging from your hands holding on the strings.
You straight up have strings attached to your back and you're holding them praying. You're going to need to pray on this one because I don't know who's coming out alive on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a thrill, it's going to give you a thrill. You don't know where you're
definitely.
ending up.
Definitely has a thrill. So, all right. So that's the very start. Where we actually start to see attractions, though, we're going to go all the way over to the Soviet Union. In the 1920s, the USSR had paratroopers trained using simple wooden towers designed to simulate the free fall and parachute deployment. In 1928, though, we get here in Gorky Park in Moscow, they opened the first Soviet amusement park, and it had a parachute tower which allowed guests to jump from 40 meters high via steel-cabled parachutes, and a spiral slide which was attached around the center column of that. And if you ever played Roller Coaster Tycoon, you remember this spiral slide style was like one of the cheapest things that you could put in your park. However, so you would slide down on a carpet on those ones, but the tower lasts for quite a long time, and you could see guests actually diving off the top of this, which
Wow.
that had to have been very scary, to jump off of something that's like 100+ feet in the air and trust that it's going to hold you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not as scary as jumping out of like an airplane, but still,
Right. That's
if
true.
if you're not used to doing that kind of thing, I think that would be pretty scary.
Right. Now, this does get dismantled. However, in Moscow, in that Gorky Park, they actually have a artist come back and do like a sculpture for it, which I think is kind of cool, just in memoriam for that early amusement park. So you can see that the start of all these things kind of happens with parachute rides. Now, how does it come to the United States? Well, this doesn't happen until the 1930s. So 1935, Naval Commander James H. Strong, inspired by the Soviet designs, patents a safer parachute drop tower with 8 guide wires, and it modifies it for civilian use, allowing there to be a 2-person canvas seat, spring cushion landing, and he would eventually sell these to Romania and Fort Benning in Georgia, and they actually get installations at a couple of different spots. But why is this cool and significant? You're going to like this.
Okay.
Guess who the first person to do the public test of James H. Strong's civilian drop tower?
Well, my default is Richard Nixon because of how much he loves the Disney parks, but now I'm just joking. I don't know. Who was it?
It was in 1935, the budding young pilot herself, Amelia Earhart.
That makes sense. And the timeline wouldn't work for Nixon.
So this was June 2nd, 1935, and Earhart was the first parachute jump, and she was the first woman to test a new training device for parachute jumpers.
I love that.
Isn't that awesome?
Didn't we find her recently? Wasn't that like a thing?
What?
They found Amelia Earhart because she was missing forever, right? Like she just disappeared, and then
Dude, don't put that on me. I don't know.
I feel like they did. They just found like remnants of her plane or something somewhere.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. So anyway, sorry.
All right, so that's Amelia Earhart. I just found some more photos of it because I think it looks cool. This this iconic drop tower, we're eventually going to get one that shows up. Well, this is more of that initial one, and this guy kind of looks like Nixon, who's on this canvas seat here with. To put it this way, you would never catch me on this ride. I am very adventurous with thrills, but first of all, they're wearing like very business dress on an amusement. Yes. Yeah, look at everybody watching in like fedoras and full 3-piece suits. Like, that sounds quite lovely. I did want to jump from a parachute.
It's very posh.
Right, very posh. In 1939, the New York's World's Fair is going to have the Lifesavers parachute jump. It opens on May 27th, 1939 in Flushing Meadows, and it was designed by Strong and built by the Bethlehem Steel and Skinner, Cook, and Babcock Company. It stood 250 feet high, and you can actually see it in this nighttime shot. I'm going to zoom in here. On the right-hand side, this tower that you can see on that structure is the drop tower. And then I found a postcard from the 1939 World's Fair as well.
Huh. That's pretty.
And you might be wondering, well, why on earth do they eventually make this drop tower a little bit taller? Because it stands at 250 feet. However, you got to think of the time period. It's 1939. Soviet Union also had a pretty lovely pavilion themselves with a giant statue that stood over 262 feet tall.
Wow.
As the
on the
Americans,
top there?
I know, it was like, it was like
star?
a work. I believe it's actually a gentleman who's like working class, and he's like holding the communist star above him, like trying to be a very proletariat.
Got it. Yep. That makes sense.
So the Americans wanted to have something that was larger, so it was 263 feet tall with a flag pole that they added to the top. Now, this drop tower had 12 cantilever arms, each had a 2-person seat and parachute combo, took roughly 10 to 20 seconds. It was sponsored by Lifesavers and was wrapped the tower with candy-themed rings. And if we actually go back to this picture, you can see the Lifesavers on this drop tower on the very bottom part. So
if I keep looking for the candy, is that the candy?
It's the candy. Lifesavers the candy.
Oh, That's
because it's a
fun.
parachute and it saves your life. And like, what I love about this is a connection to Disney because of all the World's Fair attractions that end up at Disneyland. Similarly, this is an attraction that's at the World's Fair and ends up at other theme parks. So they actually do change this one and move this one around quite a bit. But isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah, but this was the 1939 World's Fair, not the 64, right?
Yes, correct. This is the 1939 one. But I just think it's a unique, although we're decades in gap, there were attractions at every single World's Fair, and there were corporate sponsorships, just like Walt Disney had corporate sponsorships for all of their attractions. So
wait. Before we move on, I have to say those lifesavers that are like stuck on the bottom of this.
Yes.
I'm wondering if they're just like they took giant like life preservers and like painted them.
Totally.
That's what they look like.
That's exactly what it looks like to me.
Anyway, okay, keep going. This is interesting.
No, you're good. Okay, so the life preserver jump, it ends up in the 3 months during the World's Fair, it earned $119,000 and had over 500,000 riders in its first season. However, there was a couple that got stuck midair for over 5 hours, and the mayor had to applaud them and like award them something from the city after they got down because it was like a big to-do.
Wow, that's a long time to be suspended in the air.
It is. Now, in 1941, May of 1941, this drop tower gets moved over to Steeplechase Park, which is over in Coney Island, and it attracted up to 500,000 riders annually again. It remained there, and it kept lit even during the World War II blackouts. So there was times where they were doing like energy conservation,
right,
but they still remain this because this was like an icon of New York at the time. It eventually closes in 1964. But it becomes a landmark and gets restored with LEDs for commemorative events. It just is not a working free fall at this point.
I always thought that they had blackouts not just for conservation, but also because of like the threat of aerial bombings. And like they had blackout curtains and whatnot to hide your light inside your house so nobody could see where the major cities were. So
I guess it would be a lifesaver if they hit that thing. Nobody was on it.
Yeah, maybe that's like they kept that lit so they could bomb that. And then, you know, if nobody's there, it wouldn't be as big a deal as the major city nearby.
Maybe.
Right?
You know, again, this is the second time that Coney Island has been brought up when it comes to the iteration of attractions as well.
Yeah.
Coney Island has a very steep, rich history in being a precursor for a lot of eventual Disney attractions and everything else. So. All right, now we're going to head into the modern day of free falls. In 1982, Six Flags Magic Mountain debuts the Intamin Free Fall, manufactured by Giovanola, which is a Swiss steel firm. Riders were seated in a gondola that was lifted up, then dropped and landed onto a curved pull-out track. The height was about 60 feet, although these do change depending on the installation. The carriage or gondola could hold 4 riders, and it used magnetic brakes and a curved brake run to stop it. They had lots of these all over. There was one in Illinois called the Edge. There was one in Ohio called the Demon Drop. There was Mr. Hyde's Nasty Fall, also in Ohio.
Mr. Hyde's Nasty Fall.
Yeah, But these, I remember these as a kid because I used to go on Six Flags Stuntman's Free Fall, and this is exactly what it was. You would go up this gondola all the way to the top, and then it would drop you, and then you'd slide backwards. As kids, though, we used to do the worst thing possible. We would bring both coins. They would let you go on with anything, by the way, minus backpacks. Like there was no like locker system. There weren't even cubbies. You just dump your stuff on the other side of the load station, and that was it. And like a lot of times when we would have like go on like Batman the Ride, we'd just like flip our flip-flops off and literally just throw them across onto the wall and then just get on the ride.
Nice.
But on this one, we would hold either Skittles or coins. And when you would free fall, they would float in your face. And then as soon as you hit the curve part, whack, everything would just slam to the back of the gondola and then dump out below. So yeah.
Yeah, probably not the safest option, but
okay. Well, you know, don't. I was a kid. I was a child. Don't be like that.
Don't be like Kirk, kids.
Don't be like me. Exactly.
Don't do what Donnie Don't does.
What?
From The Simpsons. Oh, I'm disappointed that you don't know that one.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't. A lot of the, sadly though, this gets removed in 1996, but there's a lot of different generations of this. We'll go into the generations in a second, but I want to stick on the free fall one, and I'm going to talk about Italy for a second with Italy's Movie World. Dun 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 dun. So Movie Land Park, which is in Lago di Garda, Veneto, Italy. It originally was an indoor amusement park at Galaxyland. So they end up pulling this this free fall system from Galaxyland, which was in Canada. It was called the Daring Drop of Doom, and they place it in Movieland. Now, why is this significant and important? Well, let's look more at Movieland. Movieland is a total ripoff of Hollywood Studios.
Yeah, when did it open? Do you know?
Timing on this, hang on. I know this was 2006 was that when this ride that I'm going to specifically talk about is in operation.
So definitely after Hollywood Studios.
Yes.
And Universal Studios.
This is just funny because it's this style, and I think it's great to look at because you guys this will blow your mind for a hot second. So remember, this is still a Intamin freefall first gen we're on here. But look what it's called. The Movieland Hollywood Tower. If you know the Hollywood Tower Hotel, they just totally ripped it off. I guess Italy doesn't have as much copyright restrictions as you would have in other places, but
the letters falling off of Hollywood and Tower,
it's totally stolen. This is like a direct ripoff of the Hollywood Tower Hotel. It's insane.
That's crazy. That's so funny.
Yeah. Now, granted, we know that this wasn't created until 2006, but it is a first gen drop tower. So I think it's kind of cool that we're seeing, not cool that they stole the idea, but it's cool that you're seeing this connection from a first gen drop tower to new school 1990s drop tower when we actually get to the Tower Hotel. So just felt I had to show that because it's like, how do you not? It's just too ridiculous. Let's move on out of first gen Intamin drop towers, and we're going to go to second gen Intamin drop towers. These are giant drops, where they had one at Six Flags Great America. It was 227 feet high. It would lift you up at the top, and it was a pure vertical free fall. So now we're getting a lot taller than the 60 to 100 foot towers of the first Intamin free fall tracks, those box track pull out curve style ones. And now we're looking at these giant drop towers, which hold a lot more guests and consistently can drop at different times on this one. They would try to pull them all up at the same, but they could operate each one of these individualized tracks. Okay, so there's that. And then now we got to go to the third generation. These are less fun. I like the old school ones because I just grew up with them. So I'm going to show you, this is third gen, which is a gyro drop. They had circular seating, smoother brakes, places like Lottie World in South Korea. That's where this one came from. 230 feet. And you could have, this one's actually really cool because at one point they did VR, where they put everybody in VR headsets, and you would go on this thing and go through a drop tower while wearing VR.
Whoa.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. So there are other systems, like SNS are the systems that you see now. They are air powered or air compressed style drop towers. These are the ones that you see consistently all over the world. These are the more popularized ones. This is a 3 drop tower that's in Hershey Park, where there's a small Kisses one, then there's a Reese's Cup one, and then there's the Hershey's Bar one for different heights. And they shoot up with compressed air. So yep. And then you have ones like over at Busch Gardens with Falcon's Fury, which is probably the most modern of all the drop towers because it utilizes a system where it actually will push riders out. And when they're sitting on their gondola, which again uses that system of circular, and it brings everybody out, but then the gondola seats will actually pull back and riders will face straight down on this drop tower. And that's it's not the largest or tallest of the drop towers, but it does tilt riders 90 degrees.
Wow.
And the tallest one we ever had, which got demolished when Six Flags Great Adventure got demolished, was Zumanjaro, which was at a height of 415, which was the height of like Kingda Ka.
Wow. That looks terrifying. Not going to lie. Dean in our chat said that that Movie Land one that you showed also plays the Tower of Terror theme music, probably the Twilight Zone theme music as well.
Amazing.
Straight up just stole all of it.
One of these days, Kate, when Distory pays the bills, we will go over to Movie Land together and ride that sucker.
Oh my gosh, I'm so down.
You have to. If we find out it's closing soon because of whatever reason, like they're dismantling it because it's too old or whatever, because that's something that was built in the 90s,
Yeah.
We'd have to get over there ASAP.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's in Italy, right? I'm all down
Right.
for Italy.
I mean, we're gonna go to Italy and ride a drop tower.
I feel like we should pair it with a trip over, was it in England, like Blackpool or whatever, where they have that like knockoff Alice ride for Disney.
Oh my God. We straight up have to go to just every park. Eiffeling. We've got to go
Tivoli.
to Europa. We've got to go to Tivoli,
Yeah.
Thorpe, Alton Towers. We need to do it all.
Man, that would be an epic trip.
It would be.
You take Mel, I'll take Elliot. We'll just go and see all the things. It would be awesome.
Yep. It sounds great. But that brings us up to speed on drop towers, and I'm going to transition to you to get us closer and closer to the Tower of Terror.
So I do have just a little something to throw in about the drop towers, and it's more specific to Imagineering because they did do some research and go and try out some of these as they were developing the Tower of Terror. So I have this fantastic picture of Kevin Rafferty, Steve Kirk, Michael Sprout, and David Duran, who went on a freefall attraction. So Kevin Rafferty is a little bit of a chicken when it comes to thrill rides. He's like self-proclaimed chicken. Like he'll go on them if he has to, but like it took him forever for them to get him on like Rock and Roller Coaster, which he helped develop. Like he just doesn't really love the thrill rides, which is ironic. But he says that he likes to think his fears make him a better designer because he doesn't take any thrill, spill, or chill for granted. They went on this free fall ride, and after it was over, they jumped out, and Steve asked Michael to share what the experience felt like to him. That's easy, Michael responded. It felt like I was attending Mass, like Catholic Mass. And Mass? Steve questioned. Why Mass? Michael answered, because all the way up to the top, Kevin Rafferty kept whispering, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph.
That's funny.
So just a little bit of Imagineering context there. Kirk, do you happen to know where this particular free fall is from?
I'm looking. There's so many that look identical to that. It's hard to... what I'm trying to use is the back of the ride vehicle. It's definitely, for sure, going to be at Magic Mountain. That's Magic Mountain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There
the
we go.
font matches and everything. Perfect.
Yeah, that's it.
That's great.
There
Thanks,
we go.
Kirk.
Crisis averted.
If we're talking context, I think one of the most important things we have to talk about when it comes to this ride is the Twilight Zone. Now, I want to preface this with saying I went back and forth about whether or not we should talk about the actual ride concept development first and then the Twilight Zone. I really think I'm just going to go Twilight Zone first just because it makes sense for you to know what was in his head already as he was developing this concept. So the Twilight Zone, if you don't know, was a TV show that was popular in the 50s and 60s. Ran for about 5 seasons on CBS from October 2nd, 1959 to June 19th, 1964, and had 156 episodes in all. The series was created by Rod Serling. CBS purchased a teleplay in 1958 called The Time Element, and Rod Serling hoped to produce it as the pilot of a weekly science fiction anthology series, that particular episode kind of explores the idea of time travel. There's a lot more to it than that, but just in interest of time, that's all I'll say. The project was shelved for a little time, but eventually did air and was immensely popular with the public. So CBS approached Rod Serling about the possibility of a series. And then, so the very first episode of the actual Twilight Zone was an episode called Where Is Everybody, which aired October 2nd, 1959. And
that's what I think about of our audience sometimes. Where is everybody?
Where is everybody? Yeah.
Is everybody there? Could you imagine if we ever filmed this in front of like a live audience? That would blow my mind.
Yeah, I would be super nervous and not be able to talk about anything. So I am watching the entirety of the Twilight Zone series currently.
How many episodes are there?
156. 156. So
you're trying to watch 156 episodes?
they're only like 20 minutes ish at a time. And so I've already watched all the ones that are directly relevant to the ride. And I've watched this one because now we're watching them in chronological order. And so The Last Man on Earth, I don't want to give anything away because a lot of things about the Twilight Zone is there's some sort of twist to the plot. And so we'll have to talk about some of the things as we go through here, just so you understand, you know, the context of the ride with the story. But I don't want to give away all of these because that's part of the fun of the show, is kind of finding out the twist. But the first episode was called Where Is Everybody? And that one was immensely popular as well. So the Twilight Zone is kind of a blend of science fiction, horror, fantasy, absurdism, dystopian fiction, suspense, supernatural drama, black comedy, and psychological thriller. It's like weird
It's great.
show.
It's a great show.
It's fantastic. And even if you're not like a huge like horror person, it's not like there are some elements in it that are scary. But I'd say the majority of the episodes are not that terrifying. They're more just kind of unsettling, I think is a good word for it. The characters always find themselves dealing with often disturbing or unusual events. It's an experience described as entering the Twilight Zone because you're like, this is weird. How did this happen? I don't know. It's like this big question mark. The show offered insightful commentary on social issues and the human condition. And again, always that memorable plot twist. So the audience was always waiting to see what the plot twist would be, which was part of the appeal of the show, is that you just don't know. You keep guessing throughout the whole thing. That's like what we're doing as a family watching this, is we're like, oh, maybe it's this, or maybe this is going to happen, or maybe it's going to do this. And it's actually like really engaging because you know something is going to change.
The Twilight Zone was the original social, where they knew engagement rate was important and retention time. So they were like, we won't put the twist until the end.
Right.
Therefore, you have to watch it all.
Right. Exactly. And often you are kind of guessing alongside the main characters as to what is going on. And you don't know, you know. The anthology format allowed for a wide range of characters. So, because like each individual episode is its own story, right? So they also included thought-provoking explorations of things like technology and politics and things that were going on at the time. What? Why
The photo you have up is ridiculous, dude.
Oh, yeah. The photos are fun. I've been showing some stills from the show, and I can't explain all of them because sometimes if you explain it, you give away the story. But if you're talking about the one with the guy with a giant head, and that's from To Serve Man, and that's
his head looked like a thumb.
He's like an alien race that comes to Earth, and they
weighs you with the scales at Publix.
Well, they well, there's a reason for that. They only think with their heads. They don't actually say words. They communicate with their brains. And
the telepathy or something?
Yeah. And so that one's a really fun episode, and it is integrated into the ride itself, but we'll go over that later. That is something I wanted to mention, is that I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of any particular episode now, because when we go through the attraction and we see certain things, I think I'm going to bring up those episodes then. So just this is just more of an overview.
Yeah, that's perfect.
The show
Love
as
it
is. So
Dude,
anyway,
you're going to have to give me like what episodes I need to watch.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you a list. I'll send you a list.
Okay, perfect. And if you want to share that with everybody on Discord as well, I think that would be a good thing so people can preface themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do that. Basically, the show made you think a lot, right? Some are centered on politics or trends of the time. The space race was a big one. Cold War was going on. The scientific experiments at the time, you think of like the 50s and 60s, there's lots of this. Like, it's the atomic age, right? There's lots of stuff going on. And people are questioning, like we do today when new technology comes up, like AI. I'm thinking about AI, right? People are questioning, is this safe? Are we using this well? Is this going to take over things? You know, that they had the same questions in the 50s and 60s about like going to space and like the technology that was coming up at the time. Like, is this good for us? Is this something that's going to turn against us? You know, those all kinds of things. It was very thought-provoking. It also explored other ideas of like another dimension or timeline or paranormal activity, death, morality, psychology. Many were allegories or parables or fables. So very like deep show in a lot of ways, but it had enough surface level that anybody could be entertained by it. It was brilliantly done. And the one I'm showing right now is from The Hitchhiker, which is actually one of the episodes that inspired the hitchhikers in the Haunted Mansion. So if you haven't seen that one, it's a fantastic watch if you are a big Haunted Mansion fan.
It looks like Kate and I. That's me asking like, yo, do you mind if I jump on board with this podcast? And she's like, oh God, he doesn't know anything.
It also had a few more lighthearted and suspenseful tales that weren't just like these really heavy topics. So they mixed it up, which I think isn't needed for something like this. So Rod Serling was frustrated by media censorship also in this particular era. He said, so he kind of approached Twilight Zone as a way to give people topics that might otherwise be censored by the media at the time. So he said in his 1957 Studio One production called The Arena, he says, I was not permitted to have my senators discuss any current or pressing problem. To talk of tariff was to align oneself with the Republicans. To talk of labor was to suggest control by the Democrats. To say a single thing germane to the current political scene was absolutely prohibited. So basically they're like, anything like mainstream media was going to prohibit talk about a lot of the things that were pressing political issues. So the show became a way of bringing about conversation and ideas to think about all of these things that were pretty much taboo for any other media outlet, which I think is really interesting.
That reminds me of like, you know how like the court jester could bring up things in jest that you couldn't otherwise bring up with the king? Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of like a similar medium of entertainment allowing to tell the truth, or even like comedians allowing to tell the truth on verboten topics. So
yeah, exactly.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. The Twilight Zone was also shot entirely in black and white, even though color was prevalent at this time because it was introduced in 1954. So I think that's also really interesting that they chose to shoot it in black and white. Like my kids were complaining because they're like, this is black and white, so it's boring.
Oh, yeah. Kids are like that, dude.
But I think it was just a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
So why in the world were they thinking about the Twilight Zone in the 1990s if this was from the 50s and 60s? Okay, besides the fact that it was just kind of a classic show in the Hollywood industry. Well, it was still popular in the 1980s because they had a TV reboot in 1985. And they also had a feature film that they made in 1983 called Twilight Zone, the movie, which was produced by Steven Spielberg and John Landis, which I have not seen. Have you seen this movie, Kirk?
I think I have. Did they do another movie? Because, I mean, I definitely would have seen one in the does this feature the plane?
It looks like it does from the concept art. I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Hang on, let me look real quick.
It's got a plain window on the movie poster. So.
Yeah. This is I definitely saw this because it's like there's like a creature biting on the wires and stuff. Yes, I definitely saw this movie. Yeah, 1983, definitely saw it. It's also why I messed up, people. Hi. I thought my planes were going to get gobbled up by alien creatures. So, yeah, welcome to that. Thanks, kids.
Yeah. People are asking where you can watch The Twilight Zone. I think that we had to get a subscription to Max was the only place that we could find unless you want to buy the individual episodes, which is kind of a bummer. But we just did like...
You know what you could do?
What?
No joke. Not enough people do this as a free resource. Look on your libraries. Not only your library might have a streaming service that has it.
No, yeah.
Or dust out those DVD players because I guarantee they have collections of Twilight Zone on DVD that you can watch or on Blu-ray. And that's completely free. You don't have to stream everything.
What?
You mean dude, the amount of time it takes to like go to the library, rent it out versus trying to find it on the internet. It's probably faster to just go to the library and it costs you nothing.
No, that's a great resource. You're right.
Yep.
I'm just lazy. So anyway, it's on Paramount Plus. Okay, sorry, it's not on Max. It's on Paramount Plus. We're watching something else.
I have
Max
Paramount Plus.
Yeah,
nice.
So anyway, there was a whole bunch of reruns on like TV and VHS that re-released the original Twilight Zones at this time as well. And it was also parodied by a lot of our shows that we know and love, like The Simpsons has parodied the Twilight Zone in their Treehouse of Horror episodes. So the very first one where it says how to cook for 40 humans, and then it says to serve man is the book they're holding in the show. That was from season 3, episode 4 of the Twilight Zone. And we'll see a prop from this come up later when we explore the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror props. There's other episodes associated to it, like this one. This is Homer Cubed, and it's Little Girl Lost when she's lost in the 5th dimension. So that one is a very popular Twilight Zone episode. There's also one called The Living Doll. And in the Simpsons world, it's the clown without pity. There is the Nightmare at 20,000 feet, which is in the Simpsons world is terror at 5.5 feet. And then there's a kind of a stopwatch. And in the Simpsons world, it's Stop the World, I Want to Goof Off. So this is not an extensive list. This is just some of them because they just continued stealing essentially from the Twilight Zone and parroting them for quite some time. Again, though, I don't want to get too in the weeds with this because we're going to make more connections as we roll through this series. And so I
love that you made connections with The Simpsons, as you and I are both big Simpsons fans. You're a bigger Simpsons fan than I would have thought.
Well,
massive.
Because Elliot is, my husband is, he's a huge Simpsons fan, as is his whole family. And we both kind of we connected with that, the fact that I like The Simpsons, but he really loves it. And we always kind of joke that we ended up becoming The Simpsons because we have the kids that are like the same. We have like a boy and then 2 girls. We're not really, obviously, but
one plays the saxophone, the other one carries a slingshot and skateboards. The other one only has a pacifier. Yeah, that's my kids. Well, I think that's a really good place for us to just pause for a moment and have a quick station break, just chatting about some of the things that we have going on at WalrusCarp and Disney Cicerone. So, Kirk, what do you got going on over there? Oh, it's going to be epic. We, for a brand new theme park that is opening up in Orlando that is crazy impactful, we're going to have to bring the noise and the funk. I have a lot of new shirt designs for our new park that opened. I have one for the Ministry, which celebrates the cursed kind of justice that you find in that attraction. I have one, surprisingly, this attraction does not have any merch of its own, but for Stardust, I Raced a Comet with the yellow and green tracks. There's one for Igor, our delightful freak. Our best selling though, so far out of having these has been Punch First, Ask Questions Later. I got it in the Kelly green color, but we also sell it in peach red and white. But
wait, to explain that for people who might be listening, it's
a question block, and it's very 8-bit if you catch my drift. We have for the werewolf, the Cursed Club members meet only midnight, and there's a werewolf with a moon and a big scratch. There's the Gold Coin Emporium with power-ups, pickups, and pixel profits. We have This Is Burke for our dragon friends. Big ones that I know that nobody has seen because they just launched today. We have for our delightful little navigational bear, constellations of confection, and all of the confections are like the S'mores Supernova and the Nougat Nebula. I had a lot of fun naming those.
That's fun.
And then another monster one. Who's the real monster? This is a real question because Frankenstein basically gets used by Victoria Frankenstein in her experiments for her own ego and control. So there's a little bit of thought provoking, but does have Frankenstein. And then to finish things off, our Pizza della Luna for those folks that like to have their moon made of cheese and pizza that's out of this world.
That's so fun.
So you can get all of those at WalrusCarp.com. They range between $26 and $30, and everything is free shipping. So yeah, check out WalrusCarp.com.
Those are really fun. You've been really busy with that. There's a lot of shirts there.
Yeah, dude. Big deal. So I brought the noise and the funk. I had been very, very busy with a lot of different designs lately. And we obviously have our app that's coming out with mode. So my attention has been all over the place, plus trying to do content and everything else. So, but yeah, that's what we got going on right now. How about you, Kate? You're busy. You just had something which just got released.
Yep. My new book, A Glimmer of Pixie Dust, Finding Our Hope in the Disney Story, just came out last week-ish. And this is the second in my Moments of Magic series, which is a nonfiction series about the way that we experience the Disney parks. So this one's focused a little bit more on hope. And I just thought I would read. A lot of people have told me that the back of the book made them cry.
Aww.
And so I thought I would just read that to you guys just to kind of give you a better explanation of what the book's about than me just kind of forgetting what my own book's about and trying to talk about it. So, I seem to do every time I do. So So this is from the book description. It says, our lives can often feel like one unending, unprecedented event after another these days. But then we step into the Disney parks or put on our favorite Disney movie, and suddenly we are transported as if the magic of the worlds these artists created is knitting our bones back together. It reminds us of our resiliency, our capacity to endure, overcome, accept what is, and step confidently into a life where we know we are fully worthy of the space we occupy. Disney is more than churros and changes that ruffle our feathers. It's less an escape from our broken world and more a healing of our broken selves. The words in this book are inspired by Disney artists and Imagineers who were real people. They didn't live in a vacuum. They knew what it was like to feel joy, hope, fear, shame, struggle, and heartbreak. They knew and they poured it into their work. And that's the gift, the pixie dust they left behind for us to discover. Hope in the midst of change, confidence despite critics, a way forward when we feel stuck. Disney's history has over time changed the very fabric of American culture, but more importantly, it's changed us. As you move through this collection of curated writings, some composed while waiting in long lines for attractions in the Disney parks, may you find the hope you need tucked into the corners of these forgotten stories. May they be the glimmer of pixie dust that helps you find joy, healing, and comfort. And may they remind you that, with the addition of a little faith and trust, there's always, always, always a way to keep moving forward. So,
I love that. It's so beautiful.
So it's available on Amazon.com is where you can find that. Also, if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you'll be able to find it there as well. And I'm working on the audiobook. It's not on Audible yet, but it will be in just a little while. I'll let you know when that comes out. So, Glimmer of Pixie Dust, finding our hope in the Disney story.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
So, Kirk, we're looking at the time and we're realizing we probably won't get through all of the concepts today, which is sad, but it's okay because we have some amazing things that I know that you're going to love coming up. But before we get to that, I want to talk about just a very, very, very brief history of MGM Studios and kind of like the place where Tower of Terror is going to sit, just to know how we got here. I think it's important for us to just know that. And I'm not going to go over the entire history of MGM Studios because that would be a whole series in itself. So don't worry. I'm not. She
would love to, by the way. She would love to.
I would, but I always think context is really important. So this will just be a brief one for you. So, MGM Studios, which it wasn't Hollywood Studios until 2008. So started off as MGM Studios, started as a concept for an entertainment pavilion in Epcot around 1985. And you can see this picture here. This is, there's not very much concept art out there about this, but I did find this one that shows kind of like a blue sky with like an entrance to a theater, and then it looks like it's next to the Imagination Pavilion. It might be where they were considering putting it, like back where you like have to walk to those bathrooms and it takes forever to get to them. I think that's where they envisioned the entrance to this being. It started as a concept for Epcot in 1985. It started with Michael Eisner. He said, we have an energy business and we have the transportation business here in Epcot, and we have all these things, but we don't have the entertainment business. So the Imagineers worked on making a pavilion based on the theme of entertainment. The idea included the Great Movie Ride. The new Disney CEO, Michael Eisner, liked the plan so much he decided that this new ride shouldn't be in Epcot, it should be part of a new park. So Universal Studios Florida was going to open in 1990, and they knew it was in development. So they would remain competitive if they made a park that was similar to that and opened before them. So this little competitive spirit there with Universal Studios Florida. And they would also have a real working studio backlot as well, was part of the concept for this.
USF in the 90s was king. When I was a kid, that's where I wanted to go. It looked so scary. Like, I thought that shark, no joke, I thought that shark was going to eat the entire boat. And so much so that I was so afraid of sharks and so afraid of Jaws that I refused to go to USF, but I thought it was the coolest place. It wasn't until IOA that we finally ventured away from a Disney park in 96.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going to Universal Studios Hollywood when I was 11. And I obviously didn't fall in love with it like I had with Disney, but it was interesting. I think the E.T. thing freaked me out. E.T. still scares me. And so he said my name and I cried. And that's like my memory from Universal Studios was me being terrified by
You
E.T.
didn't cry this time when we went and he said your name.
I didn't.
You put your head in your hands, though.
I did.
Which I thought was also...
It wasn't him saying... You were the one that said my name, wasn't it?
That's not true. No, I have it on... I have video of him saying your name.
Oh
Yep.
gosh. Okay. Trauma. Sorry. I'm going to push past my trauma from ET. MGM Studios was purposefully proposed to be a half-day park. It was meant to be a smaller park. Walt Disney World property had plenty of room, of course, for a larger one. But they wanted to keep it small, mostly due to budget and also the original desire to make it a half-day park. Its plan was to highlight live action film, animation, television, and music, basically be Disney's answer to Universal. Bob Weiss, the creative lead of the project, said they had more ideas than they had money, in part because the park was initially conceived as a half-day experience. It was at the time thought that people had an extra half-day at Walt Disney World the day they went, to or from the airport. And so that's why it was going to be a half-day park. So you could have a full-day visit to Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and you could have another park that took up a half-day. So it was going to be a little park that we designed as a little park. And Typhoon Lagoon was also devised because of that same concept, the idea that you could have like a check-in day for your hotel and have a half day at a swim park, or you're checking out, but your flight isn't until late afternoon. You can go and enjoy something. That's why these parks existed the way that they did. But it's also possible that it was a smaller park because it was because of Universal Studios opening, and they had to rush the project in order to beat them and open before them. Okay, so MGM Studios opened May of 1989, and Universal Studios opened June of 1990. So they beat them by like a whole year, which is
big.
Yeah, big. So, but they realized over time, in order to compete with Universal Studios Florida, they would need to make the park bigger with more thrill rides to appeal to teenagers and the youths. And so they needed to expand with rides with more shorter durations and more thrill rides in particular. The opening day attractions for Disney MGM Studios was rides that was more like shows, or it was the backstage tour with the Catastrophe Canyon, or Inside the Magic with special effects and like the production tour or walking tour. So they just knew that they needed more for this park. I did find this, Kirk, though. I was looking at Universal Studios Florida, and I found like some like opening day with all of their team members and like people that created it, which I thought you would enjoy that.
I do. I love that.
And they have their map as well, which is so funny because there's so many elements of this. Like they have the lagoon, and it's just like we have, the water feature that's in MGM Studios or Hollywood Studios today. And I do have this classic map of Disney MGM Studios, and I love that in this map you can very clearly see the Mickey head that's kind of like hidden in the park.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks like he's upside down, but you can see his two ears. And some of those elements are still there, but a lot of them have gotten lost. Like Echo Lake obviously is still there for one of his ears, but I think the other ear has mostly kind of like disappeared over time because they've developed it.
It used to be painted on the top of the building. I think they've just never upkept the paint.
Yeah. But you can see how tiny this park is also with this. And we've talked about this before. I can't remember which series. Maybe it was Osborne Lights. But the back lot you could see takes up a majority of this park. And it was a really long experience to go on. So,
well, I mean, this was an active studio space, both for animation and film production, because they were running out of space in Cali too. So that was the other reason why both Universal built here in Florida, and also why MGM became a thing.
Yeah, they did TV shows, they did movies, they did animation here as well.
Yep.
That was kind of like the vision that Eisner had for this. So they knew they needed to add on to this park, and so they were going to add something called Sunset Boulevard to open in 1994. This was officially called the Studios Expansion Project, started in 1990 and continued for most of the decade. And you have to remember, during this time, they were also building Euro Disney for part of that time over in Europe, which also didn't work out financially very well. But just so in context, the Imagineers were extremely busy in this time period, not only with Euro Disney, but also the expansion of this particular park. Sunset Boulevard, the entire street, is dedicated to the glitz and the glam of old Hollywood, late 30s to early 1940s, like when Walt Disney premiered Snow White in 1937 at the Carthay Circle Theater, which is on Sunset Boulevard. It's basically Disney's version of old Hollywood's theater district. The real Sunset Boulevard runs from Pacific Coast Highway and Pacific Palisades east to Figueroa Street in downtown Los Angeles, and it's a major thoroughfare in the Beverly Hills and West Hollywood area. So it's including the world-renowned Sunset Strip. So that's just the context of like what Sunset Boulevard is for people who are not familiar with LA or Hollywood or any of the culture there.
Still one of the most beautiful places to actually catch a sunset in all of Walt Disney World.
It
Grab a
is.
coffee and chill out. It's beautiful. Stare at the tower.
It's lovely. They needed a visual anchor, or what Walt called a weenie, because he used to lead his dogs around with hot dogs, like pull people towards something, to draw guests north from the park's central hub, because it's a dead end street. So like, how do you get guests to want to walk down there? Because who's going to want to walk more ever for anything? So you have to give them a reason to want to go down the street. So they knew they needed something big at the end of it, which is why they started talking about developing an attraction for this part of the park. So in 1989, movie director Mel Brooks, Michael Eisner, Marty Sklar, and Imagineer C. McNair Wilson and a group of other Imagineers met to discuss the plans and the park's expansion on their first thrill ride. So they kicked around some new ideas. A prominent one was Castle Young Frankenstein attraction, which was a Bavarian village and a drawbridge leading to a castle. Have you ever seen Young Frankenstein, Kirk?
I remember seeing it like maybe 20 years ago, and I don't remember a thing.
Okay, because that's where I said that like Roland Z. Hay thing that I was saying the other day, and you're like, what is that?
Came from that.
That comes, yeah. You would actually probably really love this movie if you have a chance to watch it. It's hilarious. It's a really fun movie.
Well, Mel Brooks was just great back then.
Yeah. So this morphed into Mel Brooks's Hollywood Horror Hotel, or a haunted hotel, likely after Mel Brooks left the project. Full disclosure, the concept art that I'm going to show you here, I think was all really early development for Tower of Terror in particular, but I just want to make sure you guys can see some more pictures here as I'm chatting about this idea, because I don't know if any concept art actually exists of this particular concept, but it was going to be a haunted hotel that had a murder mystery in it. The storyline was a murder occurred in the basement swimming pool of this hotel, causing the elevator to behave in a strange manner. The hotel manager was number one suspect among those present in the hotel at the time of the murder. The team suggested legendary horror actor Vincent Price to be cast as the hotel manager. He also did some vocal work for Phantom Manor in Paris around the same time. But the problem was there was no solid connection between the murder, the pool, and the elevator. Like, how in the world does a haunted pool or murder in a pool affect the elevator? Like, that doesn't. So Michael Eisner looked at Frank Wells and said, is Vincent Price still relevant to today's audience? And Wells responded, well, he certainly had his day, but he hasn't done anything in a long while. And Eisner said, well, it doesn't really matter anyway, because I'm sorry, guys, it's not all that compelling and I don't get the story. And that was kind of the end of that concept of this haunted hotel. Or so you think. This is the point where Kevin Rafferty joins our story, and a lot of this I want to point out is from his fantastic book that's called Magic Journey, My Fantastical Walt Disney Imagineering Career. And if you love Disney history, especially if you love kind of the 90s period of Disney history to early 2000s, this is a fantastic read. Even if you like earlier stuff too, because he did work in Disneyland as a dish machine operator way back in the day in Disneyland. And so this is one of my favorite Disney history books because he's such a fantastic writer and he's hilarious. So just a little bump for Kevin Rafferty's book, because a lot of the things I'm going to share are from it. Kevin Rafferty came in and his first pitch was not for the Tower of Terror. His first pitch was for something called the Creature's Choice Award Show. And this is one, Kirk, that I think you're going to love. So he says this show is
Kevin and I have very similar humor, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. He's very punny in the way that he communicates things. He's the one that named like award wieners in like DCA. Anyway, he said this show for Creature's Choice Awards is the equivalent to the Academy Awards, but for movie monsters, including tonight's Lifetime Achievement Award honoree, the biggest star in the genre, Godzilla. So I don't have a lot of concept art for this, so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. The lobby pre-show guests would stand in a snack bar featuring monster-themed snacks like buttered fingers. There was going to be 4 Egyptian sarcophagi who were in each of the 4 dark corners of the room. The pre-show would begin when their ancient lids creaked open to release the doo-wop harmonies of the singing group called the Sarcophagi's.
That's awesome.
They would be singing in 4-part disharmony. And Kevin noted, if I was pitching the show today, those musical mummies would probably be rap artists, like WRAP artists. So the theater doors would then open and guests would enjoy a 17-minute multimedia extravaganza where famous movie monsters would step up, fly up, or crawl up to receive their Screamy Award. Things would go wrong, though, based on their character. So, example, the best aliens from outer space category, the Martians laser blasted their way into the theater and landed on the stage in a flying saucer to receive their award. And throughout the shows, this is the part that I love, Kirk, because throughout the show, guests would be updated via live shots of Godzilla's progress toward the theater from Tokyo. So you would see him kind of like stomping his way towards the theater. And then in the finale, Godzilla literally brings down the house by destroying the theater.
That's fun.
And so this picture is amazing because it's like, this was from Kevin's book. And you can see like the Epcot spaceship Earth ball. And then you can see like some flames and exploding things near the monorail. And then it's this giant Godzilla, which is probably a toy next to a model, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
So Michael Eisner absolutely loved this concept. He said home run, but he's like, but it's really, really big in scope. So he said like, it was like American Adventure size big of what he was proposing. So they said, hey, like, this seems like pretty big. Can you go and do some research and like give us a better sense of what this is going to cost? Right. So he did. Kevin went to refine it and did a little bit of research. So he went to something called the Weekend of Horrors in NYC and met with horror movie experts and celebrities, including Cassandra Peterson, aka Elvira, or the Mistress of the Dark. So they wanted to put her as a animatronic in this attraction. And I actually had to like cut off this picture just to keep this family friendly. I'll just say that. But this was a film in 1988, an American comedy horror film called Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I have not seen this. Have you seen this one, Kirk?
No. You know what's funny is I didn't know how popularized Elvira was. Like, I remember when I was a kid, Elvira was very popular. But at Knott's Scary Farm, she's an icon there. Like, they sell merch with her, and she will occasionally come out and do like meet and greets and stuff.
Yeah, she's still around. So,
yep.
Still kicking. I actually do have some concept art with Elvira lounging on a chaise lounge here. And here's some notes for what it would have been. It says, applause sign, curtain opens on Elvira. Orchestra plays a sexy blues in the night. She is holding an award while reclining sensuously on her velvet boudoir settee. The creatures in the audience go crazy with screams and catcalls. And then she says, oh, stop. I swear you're all such monsters. Now bend an ear, my darlings. The nominees for Best Alien Invaders are The Invaders from Mars. And then it just goes on, drifts off. So
tell me that doesn't look like Mr. Toad or Pirate Red.
Oh, Pirate Red. Sure. I was like, Mr. Toad.
No, like the Rapunzel in Mr. Toad's.
Yeah. Same kind of
It's
pose.
like the same exact kind of pose on a couch.
I think it's supposed to be reminiscent to Cleopatra, and we see her in Small World, lounging there in, obviously in doll form and not quite as revealing outfit. But anyway, so that was the concept for Elvira. And then there was this one. I think this is so great because Jeffrey Katzenberg suggested they cast Eddie Murphy as the audio animatronic Frankenstein monster host. So Kevin rewrote the character to be named Eddie Frankenmurphy. And he said he would have sang an imitation of James Brown's I Feel Good as the show opener. And as Kevin was pitching this, Eddie's bodyguards had to leave the room because they were laughing so hard. So we have this concept here. You can actually see it looks like Eddie Murphy. That's crazy. With his kind of like squared off hairstyle and then like stitches across his forehead. And it says, Eddie Frankenmurphy says, agents, what are you going to do? And now to present the award for the best alien invader is my favorite Mistress of the Dark, the loveliest creature known to creaturedom, Elvira. And then smoke pours out of Eddie's ears. the note from Kevin was that a real cut up, he was going to keep everyone in stitches. So Eddie Murphy was big back in this time. So, it would have been fun to have him as an audio animatronic. So what happened with this attraction? Well, it wasn't a thrilling one. Okay, so if we're looking for something that's specifically a shorter attraction that's thrilling, this didn't really fit the bill. It's a little bit more like Muppets 3D. It's like a fun show experience, but a little bit more involved because it involved all these audio animatronics and special effects and whatnot. It was also extremely expensive to produce all of these things. So it came down to a corporate decision between Tower of Terror and Creature's Choice Awards, and the park needed more rides and not shows, so the choice was clear. The monsters would not be getting their Academy Award show.
You could see why Eisner was into this, though, because you greenlight something like Food Rocks.
Right.
So Food Rocks and this are very reminiscent parodies, highly trending, or things that are popularized of the time. Pop culture references make sense.
Yeah, it's very Eisner coded for sure. I agree. I think it's also interesting that even though this ride got shelved, a lot of these concepts did come back on other attractions that Kevin Rafferty worked on. So this made me think about the queue for Disneyland's Minnie and Minnie's Runaway Railway has a concession stand in it, right? And so it has these fun little puns that I feel like he would have put in this because he was going to have all these monster named snacks, right? So this says, try our pretzel combo, more dough for less dough. And it says, we're not kidding, like KNOT. So this is all like very Kevin Rafferty jokes. And then of course they have the ketchup with Bagora Orchards. It says, if you're running behind, you got to catch up. And then next to it is Cat's Up, which is Figaro's finest, like, because he's a kitty cat, which I love. And they have the mallard cups for Darkwing Duck in here. These are treats you eat in the night. And they have some witch hazelnut candy made with natural ingredients. Lots and lots of funny, punny snacks that I feel like because we're going to be in the lobby of a show and have funny, punny snacks in this attraction, I think that he repurposed and recycled that idea for this attraction, if I had to guess. Sorry, there's even more here. There's the original Laugh-O-Grams snacks, and then Grasshopper and the Ants. But then we also see it in the Monsters, Inc. ride. There's a snack vending machine as well with like Blort and Ooze and all these kinds of like salt and fat. And he also worked on that attraction as well. So I think he just really liked the idea of funny snacks in these attractions.
I'm with him. I'm into it.
That's kind of our introduction to Kevin Rafferty's involvement in this particular park. But at this point, he had not worked on any e-ticket attractions at all. And so it's interesting that he's the one that kind of comes up with this idea for Tower of Terror. But it's such an involved story that is so interesting in the way that it came about. We unfortunately don't have time in this episode to go over that. So that's going to have to be something that we talk about next week, exactly how we got from this Creature Choice Awards into the Tower of Terror concept with the Twilight Zone.
Love it. Love it. I'm excited. I didn't know about the Creature Award. So I was just like, if you saw me just staring off into the distance, I was like compartmentalizing everything about the attraction because that would have been cool. So much glad. Thank God we got a ride. I am always ride show is here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I'm always want rides first. But it's so funny because of thinking about all this stuff with like Epic Universe opening and whatnot. And they have like a Monsters Unchained attraction. And it sounds so much like some of these early concepts where they were playing around with the idea of having, monsters and that like Frankenstein castle and whatnot. And, the bridge going into it, all of that.
The manor, there is a giant gate / drawbridge kind of vibe to it. And then there are huge Frankenstein's animatronics and they're very lifelike. Like, I feel like they wouldn't have done it justice back then. I feel like today it is definitely, we are now at a new level of what tech needs to bring. So
yeah. I think all the advances in technology, it makes it really interesting. But so I think that is where we're going to pause this episode. And then next week, we will dive into the concept, the story of Tower of Terror, and we'll see how much farther we get beyond that. Because this is going to be a very involved series because there's so many tiny details and history to look at as we dive into the Tower of Terror. So, Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
Just like Frank and Murphy, I feel good.
I feel good too. It's good. I love that Godzilla thing. The whole concept.
Yeah,
of Godzilla,
that is hysterical.
That even if
I still want to see Godzilla crush Walt Disney World.
Even though I'm glad that we got the Tower of Terror, I'm a little bit sad we never got to see that attraction come to fruition. And I wish
it would have been fun.
We could see more concept art from it because it was just a really fun one. Anyway, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Distory. We hope you enjoyed jumping into this new series for Tower of Terror. And we'll continue on with the concept next week for the next episode of Distory.